Good afternoon, Mr. Wick.
Alright, so one thing we know for sure about John Wick 5, he can't just die again. That'd be kind of redundant, right? But I've got a theory that actually explains what happens to Keanu Reeves' character by the time the franchise wraps up for good. Now, as you already know, this is just the intro to the video you're watching, and if you keep watching, like the absolute legend that you are, you'll see exactly what we're getting at. So let's not waste any more time and dive right in. With John Wick 5 looking more and more like a sure thing, it's got a tough challenge ahead, retconning Chapter 4's near-perfect ending. But one theory might actually hold the key to what really happens to John in the franchise's conclusion. Despite what seemed like his tragic end, there are plenty of clues suggesting he might still be alive. The cryptic dialogue from his allies, deleted scenes, and the heavy push for a fifth movie all point to one thing: John Wick isn't done just yet. And if this theory is correct, his true ending might have already been set in motion. Considering how massive John Wick 4 was at the box office, it's no shock that the studio wants to keep the momentum going. But beyond the financial appeal, there's a strong argument that John's story isn't fully told yet. Sure, Chapter 4 felt like a fitting send-off, but let's be real. After everything he's survived, it's hard to believe that final showdown was enough to take him down. If anything, John Wick 5 could be the ultimate final chapter, giving him a send-off that truly caps off his journey while pushing the franchise in a bold new direction. Now, what if instead of bringing John back just to kill him off again, which would be completely pointless, the next movie actually sees him take over the high table? That's right. What if John Wick, the man who spent the entire franchise trying to break free from this world, ends up at the top of it? It sounds ironic, but it actually makes sense. If he can't escape the game, the only way to truly be free is to rewrite the rules himself. Leading the high table would allow him to bring honor and a moral code to an organization that has caused him nothing but pain. It might not be the peaceful retirement he originally wanted, but it would finally give him a purpose beyond just survival. This also wouldn't mean the end of Keanu Reeves in the franchise. With John at the head of the high table, future movies or spin-offs could still feature him as a mentor or overseer, rather than the main assassin on the run. That way, the series could evolve without fully letting go of its iconic protagonist. And speaking of spin-offs, Ballerina, starring Ana de Armas and featuring Reeves, is set to premiere on June 6, 2025, and could give us even more insight into what's next for the John Wick universe. If John Wick does return in Chapter 5, that means he probably faked his death. Maybe he got a brief taste of peace, but let's be honest, that was never going to last. If he resurfaces, it'll likely be out of necessity rather than choice. Taking control of the high table wouldn't just be about self-preservation, it would be about making sure no one else has to suffer the way he did. By changing how the system works, John could create a path for others to escape the cycle of violence that trapped him for so long. Interestingly, there's already a John Wick spin-off in development called Under the High Table, which seems to lean into this very idea. Details are scarce, but it's expected to dive deep into the inner workings of the high table and the people who run it. If John Wick 5 really does end with John taking over, this spin-off could be the perfect way to explore what that actually looks like in practice. Of course, this kind of ending would be bittersweet. On one hand, it would be satisfying to see John finally in control of his own destiny, but on the other hand, it means he never truly gets the freedom he's been fighting for since the very first movie. Sure, he might have more power and authority, but he'd still be stuck in the world he wanted to leave behind. He might have a bigger purpose, but he'd never get that quiet life he once dreamed of with his wife Helen. Then, there's the question of whether bringing John back at all is even a good idea. Chapter 4 wrapped things up so well that any continuation runs the risk of undoing that perfect ending. If John Wick 5 does happen, it can't just be another revenge story. It needs to offer something new and give the character a conclusion that's just as, if not more, impactful than before. If they're going to revive John, it has to be for a reason that truly justifies it, otherwise they risk diminishing everything Chapter 4 built up. The biggest challenge for John Wick 5 is living up to its predecessor without feeling like a step backward. Most fans were satisfied with how Chapter 4 ended, so if they do bring John back, they need to make sure it's worth it. Maybe he transitions into a mentor role, training the next generation of assassins. Maybe he remains a shadowy figure who operates from behind the scenes. Or maybe, just maybe, he finally finds a way to bring real change to the high table, ensuring no one else suffers the way he did. But is John Wick 5 the end of the road? Maybe for John himself, but the franchise? Not even close. The spin-off Ballerina is on the way, and there are already talks of more projects, including a possible Kane and Akira film. And let's not forget the Continental, which kicked off the John Wick universe on the small screen. Clearly, the studio sees potential in expanding this world beyond just John's story. Given the figures, it is clear why they are making progress. John Wick brought in over $86 million at the box office, while John Wick Chapter 2 brought in $174.3 million, and so on. John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum brought in $327.7 million at the box office, while John Wick 4 brought in over $440.1 million in 2023. With each installment performing better than the last, it's no wonder they want to keep the momentum going. Even if John Wick 5 is the last main entry, the world itself has enough depth and intrigue to sustain multiple spin-offs and side stories. So, where does that leave us? Well, if John Wick 5 does happen, it needs to justify itself in a way that Chapter 4 already did. Whether John becomes the leader of the high table, takes on a new role as a mentor, or finds another unexpected fate, it has to be something truly meaningful. And one thing's for sure, if he does come back, it won't be just to die all over again. Whatever happens next, it has to be something big.
Looks like you already have.
Now before we wrap this up, there's one more thing to talk about. If John Wick 5 happens, its biggest challenge won't just be bringing John back, it'll be outdoing Chapter 4's insane action scenes. Now let's be real, John Wick Chapter 4 has some of the most mind-blowing action sequences ever put on screen. From that insane overhead tracking shot where John wipes out enemies with explosive shotgun shells, to the brutal, almost comical staircase fight where he gets knocked all the way back down, the movie just kept raising the bar. With spin-offs like John Wick Under the High Table and Ballerina on the way, the franchise is far from over. But if Keanu Reeves does return for Chapter 5, the real challenge won't be explaining how he survived, it'll be topping the action. Now, how do you outdo the Dragon's Breath shootout or that brutal stairway battle? If anyone can pull it off, it's Keanu Reeves and director Chad Stahelski. But one thing's for sure, it certainly won't be easy. And that wraps up today's video, folks. If you want to stay updated on all the latest movie news, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a big thumbs up. Share this video with your family and friends. By doing so, you'll stay in the loop with all our future updates. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.